Hello, everyone. Andres Cambo here with another episode of the Ponytails Podcast, and I am joined by Lee McCroskey. This is the second episode we have with Lee. We have some stories we didn't cover last time. If you haven't checked out that episode, make sure you check it back. This time, we are going to get the story of the dirt pile, just so we can have our own version.
Okay, it's up to you.
But
I mean, with what you're paying me, I'll do whatever you want.
But just so people know,
What? Go ahead. Keep talking. Camera's rolling.
Just so people know what we're talking about, to give them a little teaser, you got some old maps from your first summer.
I do.
We got some stories of things that happened backstage or off stage from sales school.
I was just trying to remember things that happened during 25 years of running sales school.
Okay, so it's going to be a blast. So these are things we didn't cover last time. But if you guys want to hear the flagpole story, which is one of the most memorable ponytails we've had, just make sure you go check out Lee's first episode and then swing back to this one for sure. But before we get jumped in, guys, if you want to support us, I'm not going to ask you to follow or share. That's other episodes. The only thing we ask for support here is if you could listen to the funny ads that we have from our sponsors who are all alumni. So make sure you go check those out. Here they are right here. Please don't skip over these, and we'll just jump right into the stories once they're done.
Thanks, Andres. You guys, part of the reason why I wanted to promote Southwestern Real Estate as a part of this podcast is because this podcast is really honest about the book experience. It has a variety of people who are on here who are talking about what really happened with them. And the truth of the matter is, we all know there's some goofy stuff that happens when you're selling books. Some of it's not so great. Some of it's just absolutely life-changing. What we wanted to do is take those fundamental building blocks and grow that up into an adult version that people can really take to the next level of their maturity and their mental health. And that's how we have built Southwestern Real Estate, is taking the best of the book field and growing it up to fit adults.
Hey guys, this is Pedro Vega with Cardinal Senior Benefits. Today, I get the privilege of talking about our people. We all know that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I say you're the average of the 5 people you interact with most often in our digital age. And I'm just so privileged and blessed to say that our average person in our organization is something to be proud of. I mean, at this point, we're working with 30 to 40 different book people, maybe in counting. Total, we work with about 90 agents across 42 states, but a lot of them are, sold books. And we definitely are good at teaching people that didn't sell books how to do this well. We got some people that give us a run for our money, but I'm so grateful for the family and culture we, get to build together. So guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you guys for listening. All right, Lee, let's jump in. All right, here we go. So first of all, I just found out while we were playing these ads that you were the one that first did the balloon popping.
Yeah, we were talking off camera, and he was talking about Pat, the balloon guy in sales school. And I was the original. Well, there was a guy that did balloons before me, but I inherited the balloons and then got sick of doing it. So I said, Pat, you have dry humor. Why don't you try it one time? And so he watched, took notes, and did it 3 times at least as well as I did. So it was hilarious. So whatever I did was a pale shadow of what Pat did.
Pat's got some good public speaking skills.
Pat's okay. I like it.
All right, so okay, I need for sure to get the dirt pile story, but we can build on that. We can build on that.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to talk, let's just go back to the beginning of Alone and Malone, and let me see this map that you have, so you can start there.
Well, I mean, this would fit in well to the dirt pile story if you want to save it.
Oh,
see, it's up to you.
Oh,
don't want to mess up the flow here.
Okay, you're right. Let's just save this. Oh my gosh, look at this map. This is from 19. What is it? 19.
I got this in 78. So it's a map of my first sales locality.
Is the dirt pile? Did you mark it on your map where the dirt pile is?
I could approximate where it is if I put on glasses. If we get to that point.
Okay, we'll get to that.
You want to?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a teaser.
Yeah, that's a teaser.
You'll want to stay tuned.
Yeah.
And if you're on a exercise cycle at the gym listening, then none of this makes sense.
Yeah, they're like, what is this? Okay, so let me see this. This is the piece of paper that you had written down some stuff. Now,
I did.
Fill me into the context of what this is. This is the story.
Well, I didn't know what we were going to talk about this time, because I felt like the first time we talked about my origins, first summer, second summer, coming back, all that stuff. And then I thought, I may have one or two short, ponytails, nothing extravagant like the flagpole story. If you tuned into the first one. So anyway, I thought, where would I have other stories? And then it came to mind, sales school. What happened backstage, what happened during some of our sales schools in 20 years. I mean, there's some.
So like these are like the Wizard of Oz stories.
This is what I would call curious happenstances.
All right, let's dig into these. I see the notes. So
yeah, I mean, I labeled it curious happenstances, and they may not. We'll see if they're curious. I don't know.
The first one I'm reading upside down here says German Measles outbreak.
Yeah, we were having sales school. We were doing sales school, and I this wasn't an early thing. This is in the 90s sometime, but I had my rhythm down. Everything was happening, organized, and we found out that a group of students, males from Eagle Blitz, had brought a severe case of German measles to sales school, highly contagious. So we had one morning, the CDC showed up with thousands of syringes and injected the entire. It was a huge sales school at War Memorial Auditorium, and we all lined up. 1,200
kids.
I was yes, they were in the balcony, and I cursed those guys that brought it. But anyway, I was the first one to get the jab way back before the jab was the jab. I rolled up I'm like, hit me, and they're like, you're clear. Man. And it, so I'm sitting there going, we're already off schedule. We got to register people. We got to, it was the very first day, as I recall.
So how did the CDC know that they had?
I don't know. I don't remember how. See, I'm older now.
They just showed up, and you're like, what is?
Yeah, I think one of the guys had ended up going to the hospital, when he arrived, and then they were like, oh my gosh, this guy's super contagious, and like, who have you been with? My entire org from Texas. Oh my gosh. Well, we've, so they just, to play it safe, they gave it to all of us. So it was a weird thing. Like, welcome to Nashville.
Can you imagine that happening now?
Like
what parents, post-COVID, what parents would say from Texas, from Texas going, you're going to give my son a jab for,
Yeah, I was a schedule Nazi. And so when I was like, how long is this going to take? Well, we have about 12 people that can be injecting at once times, But anyway, threw us off. We made it. No one else got sick.
What's the difference between regular measles and German measles?
I don't know. It's something with, I don't know, the virus goose steps through your system. I don't know.
Oh,
it's Nazi reference. I don't know. I do not know. Now, my wife is downstairs. We're in my home, and she is a doctor, so we could get her up here and ask her if you really want to know. But
that'd be funny.
I don't think people tuned in for that.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, that was one example.
What year was this?
I think sometime in the 90s, as I recall.
Oh, that's brutal. That didn't. If it would have been today's world, the news would have the PR stuff.
Oh, it was on the news in Nashville. Yeah, Channel 4 breaking news. Thousands of students are in Nashville for sales training, and today, So
bananas.
But people weren't freaked out like they would be nowadays. It was like, oh, that's an interesting story.
German measles outbreak. Everybody got jabbed.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. There was no escape. People
We
are
gotta
crying.
find-
I don't like needles. Shut up.
There's got to be an alumni from that summer that we can find who remembers getting jabbed. Or like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, there's lots of people.
It was at least 1,200 kids. There's going to be some of them had to finish, and some of them probably had multiple summers. And their origin story includes, we went to sales school,
and patient 0 was from Texas, so we could start there.
And just find them. Network that way. That's how. The next 1,200 episodes are all going to be people who sold in 1992.
That's right. I'm patient 412. I was there.
What is okay? So now let's move in. We have a list, y'all. This is the first time we got this kind of stuff.
Let me pick. Because some of these are funny and some of them aren't. In fact, some of them I shouldn't have even written down because they're just useless. There were a couple summers where we were in trouble downtown because when we were training, now they train more at the Marriott by the company, and at the company they have a nice facility, and there are fewer students. Oh, but anyway, when we were downtown, there were the students, as you guys know, if you're old, we were known for running up the hill with your bag.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the deal was running the hill.
And that's like a half a mile almost.
So yeah, it's a pretty good, decent incline for quite a, people would park fairly far away and start running up the hill. And the problem was we were also next to the Capitol and where the legislative buildings were. So you'd have state senators and people walking around, with their attachés and, their cabinet members. And there was a year I was always trying to caution them, please don't. I tried to get them to not run. That was futile. Again, Eagle Blitz, I believe that there was a state senator that was actually knocked over by this human, if you could see it, hundreds of students running with heavy book bags, and it was like unstoppable. It was like a train coming, and no one would like move or dodge or like step off the curb to accommodate civilians. It was just like
the
forearm shiver.
Like the running of the bulls.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It was the running of the bulls, but they were book bagged. And so we got in big trouble, and I had to chastise the crowd and make them not run. And it was still an exercise in futility, but that was exciting that wasn't on the news, but anyway, it didn't help our reputation.
I remember I had to run my first year, and I remember thinking, this is insane. I mean, his kids would just run, and like there's also like parking lots and stuff. The cars, they got that warped mirror thing that's supposed to help you see, but totally can't see. Yeah. So you'd have like a car like come out, and kids would like bump into it, or
sure. I mean, I don't know why people weren't killed, but it was just a steady flow, and then you'd see the stream of humanity coming up to a red light, downtown, and they would just flow across, and people like, we must get our seats in the front row. So anyway,
we want Dan Moore to sweat on us when he's doing his Mr. M talk.
I don't know what it was. That was an exciting time. What else do I have? Well, we had people at sales school who were, about those sheets, those are extras. I don't have that much material. I've got like a whole tome of sheets. No, we had, and some of this is GRS, but I'll stick with sales school. I remember Barrett Ward he had a little audio snafu. He came to do product training for the education division, which is
at the time it was like split between two.
Yeah, so he was doing that, but he was completely ill prepared. So he was clicking through slides and saying dumb stuff, and he knew it. And he was like, wait, let me go back. What I meant was, and it wasn't that great, and he knew it. I think the crowd probably knew it. And then he walked off the stage, and Swordfish was in charge of microphones, and he hadn't cut the mic yet. And Barrett walked backstage, and he went, boy, I effed that up, didn't I? And it was all over the loudspeaker system, and everyone went whoop. And Swordfish like hot mic and cut it off. But anyway, it was so funny. I mean, Barrett like fell down backstage. He was all red and just like, oh my god. Yeah, they laughed. But that was funny. So these are things maybe you weren't there for them, but I like them. I was telling that dirt pile story once. It was always on Thursday of sales school because each day had technical training and what we called emotional training to prepare people for how difficult it was going to be. So Thursday, the emotional bit was the dirt pile story to talk about what went well and what went poorly my first couple of weeks. And as I was doing that, partway through it, a student from the UK came up the side steps of War Memorial and got his manual out. I'll use this. And you know how they used to work in the parking lots where they'd say, door, So he comes on stage and I'm like, no one does this.
What you're talking?
While I'm talking, I'm in the middle of the talk and I'm trying to carry on. He comes up the side steps. The guys in the back, Swordfish and Jeff and different people are like, what do we do? What do we do? Well, we got a guy on the stage. Intruder alert.
Do you have like an earpiece at that point?
No, there's no earpiece. I'm like, I need to react to this guy who's standing like 5 feet from me, looking at me.
Oh, he like walked up. He not even on the side stage. He walked on up to you.
Came on the stage and he goes, door. So I'm like, we have a drug problem here. Something is horribly wrong.
He's just trying to win the competition.
Well, but I found out later from his student manager that his meds, he didn't take them or something. So he was really out of it. So he wasn't trying to I think I can get a door knock from Lee on stage during his part. So anyway, I just turned to him in the middle of the talk and I said, hello. And he was just standing there and I was like, the look in his eyes was like something's happening with him. So I said, have a seat. He was highly suggestible.
I mean, keep talking.
And so he just had a seat, boom, right on the stage. And that was, he just sat down in a heap and he stayed there, which was good. Very coachable.
Like on the stage, you sat?
Yeah, he just fell down in a heap and just sat there. And I'm like, so I wrapped up the talk. People were kind of like, is this part of the shtick?
This is like the most emotional.
Yeah,
part.
it lost some of its edge. But that was a fun time. And then his manager, she was just literally crying in the back. She's like, I can't believe it. So we survived.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's
So that was
so
fun.
Funny.
Occasionally had people who had issues during sales school. What else happened?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The measles outbreak or that. I don't
Measles
know.
is good.
I don't know.
I know Lester Crafton, you had him on prior to. He part of the bane of my existence, trying to keep things on schedule. Jeff and I were just like schedule Nazis. We were very into making
Get to
sure
the next
everything
talk.
got
5
to the
minutes.
next.
Get on out.
Because there'd be guys, somebody would have a part for 20 minutes, then someone would come up the door and they had to do a part and get back to the office. So it was all very scheduled. Anyway, so Lester shows up about 15 or 20 minutes late to his part. So I've been tap dancing. I ended up swapping parts, doing something in front of his. And then when he came out, he had overslept. Something went wrong and he was in a super rush. And he comes on stage and he's got like tissue from shaving all over his face, like strips of toilet paper, and he's bleeding. And this is the week that we're filming video sales school for posterity. So you want to have everything just, looking good on the screen. And so Lester came up and he was a bloody mess backstage. I'm like, Lester, he's like, I was shaving in the car with a straight edge or something. I'm like, okay. He goes, I'm going out. And he went out and did his part. But people again were looking at him like, what is happening here? Because you're thinking, oh, he had a little cut on his cheek or he had a little nick down here. No, it was bleeding onto his collar. It was just like nasty. So anyway, he survived. I don't think he lost too much blood, but that was memorable. We filmed it. We didn't show it again, but anyway,
that footage has got to exist somewhere.
Yeah, it has to. Maybe. I don't know. What else happened?
Swordfish, if you're listening, let's just say I broke into your office and stole
it. Yeah. I had, what else did I do?
Oh man, these are great.
I don't know. I remember Rory Vaden. If you guys remember Rory.
Hates elevators.
He loves to take the stairs. And he loves to take parts of other people's talks and use them in his part, which I found. So Rory, if you're listening, I still love you. However, and I called you.
Rory listens. So we tried to contact him again. I don't think
I called him out because I listened to him once and he had a good keynote speech, but he hadn't been to sales school and listened to the other parts. And so he's lapsed into the section of my bike accident during the dirt pile.
Right.
He literally started doing it. I'm like, I looked over at Travis, I'm like, he's doing the dirt. He goes, I fell on my bike, and I was sitting there, and the rain was on my face, and I felt the blood running down in my socks, and I was just like, this is almost word for word. He can't.
They're gonna think it's a sales talk.
Yeah. So anyway, it was.
What did you say to him afterwards?
I was just like, dude, do you know that you actually took a section out of my talk and used it? He's like, no, I did. Oh yeah, maybe that's. Anyway, it wasn't a huge deal. I just requested that he
don't do
his own material. Because if you hear, we had people do that before. In the old days, they would tell like jokes when guys came out. They would say, well, there's a farmer and there was a priest, and they would do those kind of jokes to warm up the crowd.
Right.
And so we had people that literally, we had to keep a list of the crap jokes that were told so that you wouldn't use. And that happened. It was terrible. You should have seen the crowd when this Kurt Kellaway launched into a repeat joke, and everybody knew the punchline, and it wasn't that great anyway. It was like, oh no.
What was your favorite joke?
Got real quiet. I don't even remember it. I don't remember jokes like that. I can't tell you one joke like that.
Is it one of those where it's like nobody lose a rubber band or like a stack of $1,000 bill or $100 with a rubber band because we found the rubber band? And that's like
no,
it was thing like
it
that?
was that caliber.
Like just deadbeat jokes. Like
Yeah, deadbeat jokes, and it was repeated. So anyway, we used to have
Congrats, like
we got away from that.
Because 7, 8, 9. All right, move on. Still good talk.
I know Robert Hicks is a sales manager, or was, and Robert, great guy. He made a couple errors. One day, we had a list on the podium, and everybody got their talk, they got notes, and they got a list of what videos they were going to show. And then Swordfish from the back would run the videos according to what was on the list. So you said, okay, I'm doing Monday's part on pre-approach. So you had 2 clips, and here's what you showed, and here's where you did it. It was all orchestrated. And Robert, for whatever reason, just decided not only to show Monday's clips, but he was a little bit lost. And so he's like, well, okay, so you see how to do that now. All right, let's see what's next. That was his. And so Swordfish was like, okay, I'll hit play again. And he showed the next clip, which was pertinent to what you would learn on Tuesday.
About that.
Yeah. And so that would end and fade to black. And Robert would look up at the sound booth and like, okay, let's just see what else we've got on tap. And so he ran Wednesday's clip. And we're in the back just going, stop, these people the next 2 days will have nothing to show. And they didn't.
Kids are learning to crew by Monday night.
Yeah. And he did on a different occasion. Sorry about the earthquake. When he came on to do the Power Hour, and the Power Hour was all about the volume library and that division's books. And so each division was kind of created factions with the other divisions. It was a kind of a rah-rah competition thing in the old days. And so Robert elected to set up a set of handbooks, the competition, on the stage, and then do an elbow slam, full body elbow slam, like wrestling. He's in a suit. He's got a bow tie and everything. He jumps up in the air, got some height for a white guy, and then came down and just boom, landed like a belly flop on your side, giving it the elbow drop on the handbooks.
Did he miss the books?
No, he hit the books. He hit the stage. He knocked the wind out of himself. He may have cracked a rib, and he ended the part immediately. He stumbled off stage and mumbled a song about Jeff going, I really hurt myself, and then fell into an elevator. And that division meeting ended promptly. But
how do you follow that?
It was a spectacle.
The person up next, like,
we had some terrible power division meetings. I remember there were people that had such elaborate setups. I mean, there was one where they strung a wire from the balcony to the stage, and then tried to put the volume library on the wire, and then kind of push it and have it kind of. The vision was that it would float down to the stage, and you would take it up, like fly down.
Like a flying book demo, but
kind of
extremely.
It came partway down, it fell off and hit kids in the head in the crowd. It didn't work. These are the things that didn't work. So yeah.
Epic fails of sales school.
Epic fails of sales school. Let's see. I wonder if I got any other ones.
What did you call them? The
curious happenstances. Yeah. I also had stuff happen at Great Recruiters, which was
Well, let's get some GRS.
Yeah, GRS. Just a couple maybe. There was a year where we showed, I secured, I don't know if you guys remember the old movie Rudy. Okay.
I mean, I could be too young or too foreign for this.
Look it up. Yeah, it was popular, I think, in the 90s.
Yeah.
But Rudy was a guy who always wanted to be a player for Notre Dame. And he tried out that he was like, you're too small, you too this, get out. And he ended up like working in the locker room, and he ends up getting to suit up with the Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. And he ends up on the last play of the game, the movie. I don't want to be a spoiler, but he gets to go in and make a play. And so they carry him off the field. Anyway, so it's called inspirational movie. So it's
like Cool Runnings, but
Yeah,
But basketball.
but yeah, it's like one of those standard football or basketball,
Friday Night Light or whatever. Remember the Titans?
Remember perfect, but it's Rudy, and you're cheering for the underdog the whole time. Well, anyway, so I secured Rudy to come speak at GRS.
Like the actor guy?
No, not the actor guy. That was the guy that played on Lord of the Rings. Sam.
Oh, Sean Astin.
Sean Astin. That was the actor. But the actual Rudy I had come speak at
Oh.
GRS, which was cool. So we showed the entire Rudy movie. People ate popcorn. And at the end, Rudy walks out. It's like the place went crazy. They loved it. He could have said anything. And he was like in his 40s at that point. But he's like, yeah, I'm the guy. So anyway, that was so successful that the next year I decided to use the same method. So that year it was, for whatever reason, Apollo 13 was the movie selected. And if you recall, that was a big fail for NASA. But anyway, I got this was some serious coin for Southwestern. We dropped $15,000 to have Gene Kranz come speak to
a GRS?
GRS.
Would you sort of been 19? No. What year was this?
I don't know. I can't remember. It's probably in the 2000s something.
Early 2000s. Oh
yeah.
My God.
But Gene Kranz shows up, and if you're like, who's Gene Kranz? He was the guy in the movie Apollo 13 that wore the white vest at NASA. And he's like, gentlemen, failure is not an option. He had a crew cut. He was all, and that was, so I got that, not the actual actor, but I got the Gene Kranz to show up. Now, I can see now why they didn't cast the Gene Kranz in his own role, because he was like a mega electrical engineer guy. And he, I talked to his agent on the phone about tailoring his message, and it was tailored. It was terrible. And he came out, and people were all like, "Whoa, Gene Kranz!" He came out and said, "Okay, I'm here to share some thoughts about our mission." And I don't even think he knew that we just showed the whole movie. So I'm going to show you some slides. He showed slides, and he tailored it in this way. He said, well, when we were doing that mission, this is as he started, I was about the same age as some of you young people. All right, this first slide, and it was like, that's it. And it was dull. And I brought my son.
Nobody
Luke,
wrote that down.
We're all sitting in the crowd, and my son, who's about 13 at the time, leans over and goes, he was bored with his slides. It was all technical stuff. Then the rocket failed. And then we had to, it's just like
G1734 fuel was not being injected at the right altitude,
exactly.
Just like
And my son leaned over and he goes, "Dad, this guy sucks." Thanks, honey. I spent a little money on this guy. And then as soon as it was over, we're like, we took a break, thankfully. But as he went out, he left, and he was like, Swordfish saw him and said, "Well, thanks for doing the talk." He goes, "Yeah, it's great. Point me to the bar." He's gone. So, because other speakers are like Rudy sat and signed books, and
people stay and talk, and they go out
to the bar. So anyway, Gene Kranz.
Gene Kranz.
I love what he did in real life. Okay.
not the sharpest speaker in the world.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'll just maybe share one more here, because some of these I'm like, this doesn't do anybody any good. At GRS, I guess I got on this kick for a few years of inviting semi-big names in to speak and paying them a little bit more. This guy wasn't as expensive, but in the old days, there was a guy named Bob Richards. He was known as Mr. Wheaties. And if you recall Wheaties boxes, they had athletes on every, they've changed the cover of the cereal. Well, Bob Richards was like a decathlete back in the day. I mean, way back in the day, I think like the 50s or 60s. So he was an older guy, but he was super famous. Like my parents would be like, "Oh, Bob Richards," Right. These students didn't know him as well, so I had to do a big intro. But we had Mr. Olympian, the whole deal, medal winner. He was a big deal, and he came and spoke. And as he was speaking, he came 2 or 3 times to do the keynote speech. Actually, this was at sales school. I'm going to correct myself. So he's doing his keynote speech, And I'm always backstage kind of monitoring what's going on, making sure no one comes up, door or whatever, ready to tackle people. So Bob is out there doing his talk, and I knew his talk. He gave it the week before. It was fine. This week, he always finished with a story about a famous swimmer, and it was way before Michael Phelps and all that. But he was talking about a guy doing butterfly, and he was actually acting it out on the stage, stroke per stroke. He would tell inspirational sports stories. So he did so well the week before that his wife requested that we videotape him. And you get in front of a Southwestern crowd, it's like,
they're jazzed up. It's a hot crowd.
It's a hot crowd. This guy never had a crowd like this. So he was like, please film me. So we were filming him, and he was out on the stage telling his story. I think was it Pablo Morales? That rings a bell. The exciting 100-meter butterfly finish, the greatest of all time. And as he's doing that, his mic he knocks off his mic. So it cuts. And so we're in War Memorial, and it's just his voice. And he is into his deal. And I'm backstage going, and I had a backup lavalier mic. I'm like, I could get this on him. I'm like, should I do this, Jeff? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I stay, or should I? And I'm like, because I'm going to walk out into the
interrupt him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking he'll stop if I go out, but I can't let him do his greatest story. Just, like you stand on the stage
just
as an orator.
Just pure diction.
So I roll the dice, decide to go out, and I try to be like, there was footage of it that's now long lost, but me trying to be small, going out, and I kind of go up beside him, and he's still doing the butterfly. So in between strokes, I'm like trying to clip this on his belt. And I get to his pocket, and it's sewn shut. I'm like, so I can't drop. Swordfish and I remembered this. We laughed so hard later. I couldn't fit the lav mic, the chassis, into his pocket because his wife had sewn his pocket shut. Whatever. So
where is this footage?
And I don't know. And I'm dodging his arms. And you think that if I were speaking,
you just stop.
And somebody, my mic goes out, it falls off my belt, something goes wrong. I'm like, hang on, guys, 1 second. And then a guy runs out and hands you a new mic. This guy was in the zone. He was like, and he's finishing, and he's about to win. And
the two rows were like,
yeah. And then so I try to get it in his pocket for a second in between butterfly strokes, and then I say, fine, this isn't going to work. And so I crawl away, trying to be small, and he finishes his story like a minute later or less. And I'm like, oh gosh. So I wrecked the video. I disturbed the story, had no impact on people because I was up there crawling around on stage.
On the balcony, like, just seeing
what happened. And then his wife, who watched the video the following week, and she's just like, she was so funny to listen on the phone. Some man came out and ruined my husband's talk. And I was like, yep, Mrs. Richards, I was
guilty.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we paid him, but
oh man,
that was hard.
He didn't come back.
No, we wrapped up. I mean, whatever.
Oh my gosh, these are
curious
gold
happenstances.
These are gold, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I said dumb stuff that's probably not interesting. There was one year, and this was it. Was it a reunion? Yeah. Anyway, this won't be funny, but it was just something I remember. We were at a big alumni reunion, and Dave Dean had shown up, and he was working with another company. He had paid for a room at the hotel, and he brought a camera with him, and he was going to interview alums and use that footage to promote whatever he was doing. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't part of the Southwestern family.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's a tough.
Yeah. So anyway, Spencer Hayes, you remember him, executive chairman of the board, got wind of that, and I became the messenger between those two gentlemen. And it was up at the Sonesta, and Dave has all his stuff set up, and then Spencer's like, "You go tell Dave Dean to get his stuff off of here," and then I'd go and say, "Dave, Mr. Hayes would really appreciate it if you would break set and not be interviewing people because this is really isn't really kosher, whatever. And then he would say, you tell Spencer that I paid for, So I was like, I had the worst alumni reunion experience of all time because I spent most of the afternoon running around
trying to tell Dave Dean to buzz off.
Yeah. And nobody was right and nobody was wrong. It was just a difference of opinion, but it just got kind of silly.
That's wild.
Yeah.
When you think of like speakers and stuff that you've seen, do you have like a person that whose talk really sticks out to you? Like, for example, like I always remember KJ's dog story.
Yeah.
Dogology story.
Yeah.
No matter where I go, I always remember it.
And he borrowed that from JT Olson.
Yeah. JT
was the primo dog man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So KJ took his talk, put his own spin on it, and then did it well. But I mean, Roger Sipes' keynote was my favorite of all time.
Yeah.
I mean to me, because it had elements of motivation, but it was also absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Ain't no stopping them.
Yeah.
So hilarious.
I brought my kids to that
Mudsuck.
every week. I'm from Mudsuck, West Virginia. Yeah, I mean that was funny.
Yeah.
And he told great stories.
Was it Rory that had the story about the bee?
Well, he had an ant pile that he was attacked
Or was
by
it?
fire ants.
But I thought there was like a little kid and he comes up butt naked.
Oh, that could have been Rory.
And then the kid gets stung by a bee. And he's
Yeah.
like, ah, and the mom just freaks out.
I
Oh,
think you're
it's
right.
so good.
I think you're right. Yeah, all the speakers did a great job in their own way.
But for you personally, so you're a great speaker.
Thank
But
you.
you have like your own.
Thank you.
How did you find that? Like, how did you find? I asked Dan the other day too. That how did you develop? He was in speech team or whatever. But
No, I wasn't on a speech team.
How did you get to that point? 'Cause you're great. I mean, you're great. I don't mean to like.
Yeah.
Be like, oh man, sorry, Lee. No, but for real, like I remember when I first came to sales school, that was one of the first things I was blown away for. Was I've never heard speakers like this before. It just that was something really unique that kids can get anywhere else. I think that really captivated them. But like, how did you get good at speaking?
Well, I did it because I loved attention and liked to get in the limelight, and so that made me like join a band and be on stage. And I also enjoyed teaching and being in front of a group. It's in grad school. I started doing that, teaching classes, comp and lit classes.
Oh, okay.
So that gave me an early sense of, I like being in control of a group and guiding things and training people. And so that just kept building.
But you were always comfortable with that. Like you were always.
I was never afraid of, I get about 70% prepped and then I do 30%, whatever happens. I want to just like, I'm reading the room and going, or something happens and I can bounce off and use that. But I don't ever just like 100% word for word.
Yeah, that's my style.
Yeah.
I appreciate
you
that.
get mostly ready and then you just go with the flow.
You gotta let it, because that way when a person comes up and says, door, you can just, like, I'm used to dealing with the.
Well, I was trained in multiple, wow. Yeah. So I got real comfortable. And when you get positive feedback from a crowd like Southwestern, then that even builds your confidence more. Maybe you get too confident.
Yeah, the crowd gets warm.
Yeah. And then you're like, you can do anything by Thursday. And they're just rolling around on the floor and laughing and throwing money at you. So
yeah, that's hilarious. This is a story. It's funny because I'll tell you a story. So Brandon Q, it was when we were doing stand-up. So Brad, I don't know if you knew that I did stand-up with Brandon.
Yeah.
Comedy duo, tall, dark, and comedy. He was tall, I'm dark.
Yeah.
Comedy was subjective. But,
beautiful.
Brandon's method was more Dan Moorish, where every word, every pause, every punchline was
orchestrated.
I mean, it was intense, which when he nailed it was gold, right? But the problem with doing it that way, I was more like you, where I go, I think I have a vague gist of what I'm going to say, but then we'll see what happens, which that's okay. It works both ways. Yeah. But Brandon, sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus here, Brandon.
Yeah, sorry, Brandon.
So
we're going to talk the rest of the podcast about you.
We're doing this, Mike. And Brandon gets up there. And the problem with doing it the way he does is if someone heckles you, it derails you.
Curveball, yeah.
So getting back on track is not a skill you're used. So he gets up on stage. He's like a minute and a half into his bit. And from the cross, it's just an open mic, but it was full. And across the bar is this lady. And you just hear her go, "You suck!"
Oh man, that's awesome. And that was directed at both of you?
No, he's on. So we.
Oh, it was just him. Oh,
so,
it's tag team.
Yeah, so the show was sometimes I'd open and he'd close, or he'd
Yeah.
open and I'd close, depending on who brought more people, whatever. But
Yeah.
so it was just him on stage. So he's like doing his bit about blah blah blah, and he's you suck, and he just stops and goes, "Oh, you're right." And then there's this awkward silence, like this, just, and everyone's quiet, and he goes, "Well, that's my time." But he sits on the mic and walks off stage.
Whoa, she shut him down. That's horrible.
Just shut him down.
Oh, that's bad.
And the whole crowd starts laughing. The biggest laugh he got was,
Well,
"That's my time." The whole crowd's dying.
I mean, part of comedy
So good.
is, how you retort. How do you bounce back?
Oh,
I mean, can you make fun of yourself?
It was great.
Self-deprecation. If you just shut off, then
I remember you used to do a thing where you point out yawns.
yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this in the last episode.
No, we didn't. I do that in class too. If I'm in front of a group of students, non-Southwestern, and somebody does a big old yawn right in the middle of my lecture or whatever, I'm just like, that is a fantastic yawn. Keep it up. That really, builds my confidence. Yeah. And they're trying to shut it off and, but I always give awards for most boring, reactions to whatever I'm sharing. And I have that somewhere on tape where, a former dirt pile story. Jeff sent it to me, a link, so I could get ready. I'm still getting up in front of sales school and doing that. They want me to come do it. And the link, when it starts up, it's like fades up, and I'm addressing the crowd. I'm like, "Hey, I'm Lee. It's good to be here. And for all of you that are leaving, I just want you to know," because it was like they've been sitting a long time, and the camera doesn't show it, but evidently people walk out of the room. And so I just
like
bring it up.
And stuff, we'll skip
I'm
it.
just like, "Hey, thanks. That really builds my confidence to see a third of the crowd get up and walk out. So I appreciate it." And everybody's kind of uncomfortable. Is this guy angry? But if I see something, I'm just going to address it.
Pointing out yawns is a genius. Just because you'll be just talking, and there's a yawn.
Yeah.
And the person just.
Hey, there were times, it reminds me in sales school, there were times when I was usually the first guy out and would intro Dan, and he would do his shtick and then flip it back to me and whatever. But there were times when Dan was out of town or in Europe or something, and there was no one to intro me. And I was like the first guy to hit the stage in sales school. So I was creative. I got my introduction, which usually came on a piece of paper. You would read the next person coming out. And I read my entire intro about myself and then said, "So welcome, Lee McCroskey." And I walked off stage, waited about 10 seconds. People are cheering because they don't know. And then I came back out and I'm like, it's me. So I thought that was
That's great.
Yeah. So it's the ability to recover.
Yeah. Do you have public speaking tips that you could share for those course? I guess I'm thinking of my brother who's doing the Stan Moore speech in front of a full. It's the biggest sales school of the summer. It's going to be this Monday.
It's true. I'll be there on Thursday. I would just say the more you practice and the more you get positive feedback, that just builds your confidence. It's all about confidence. Anything, whether you're snowmobiling or public speaking or whatever, you just have to do it enough to get comfortable and know your material well enough. It's like your sales. Think about this. It's like your sales talk. If you know it cold, then you can handle interruptions, deviations, kids,
barking,
somebody peeing on your sample, whatever, and get back on track because you know your stuff. So if you're confident in the material, I'd say, and you got to practice. That's all.
That's so good, man.
You can't read books about public speaking.
Yeah. Dan said, I don't remember who it was a quote, but he goes, "If you want to get better at public speaking, you got to speak publicly."
Oh, that's better. That's Dan. Dan's always trying to one up me.
Even from afar.
Yeah, even So
post.
That's well put. Yes.
Oh man. Okay.
So what else do you want to know? What else did I write down?
I was going to say we have more on the list.
I have more,
I have a couple questions to catch up since last time we talked. This, believe it or not, I was like, when did we do that? Was it January of last year?
It was a long time ago.
No, it was December of 21. So it's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really on this sheet. I mean, I've got thoughts from the book field when I sold.
Okay. We'll get into those right before the dirt pile story.
Okay.
If that's cool. But you alluded to this a little bit earlier. You're teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you get into that? Because where did that come from?
Well, teaching, I have teaching in my blood from my father was a professor at Wichita State. And I don't know how that transfers, into your DNA, but again, that was in front of people was kind of normal, from way back. And so, and I taught, my second summer, I had to cut my summer short so I could come back, and I found out I was going to be a TA in the English department. So I was like, what? I got the job because I applied late. I didn't, it was full already. They said, don't even worry, whatever. But I sent them something. And then partway through the summer, they said, hey, guess what? We had a guy drop out. You're going to be a teacher. And I'm like, yeah. So I was a lecturer at Kansas and, kind of fell into that, and it just kept building.
So you've been doing I didn't know that. You've been doing it forever.
Yeah. I mean, that was back in the early 80s during grad school.
What's your favorite thing to teach? Is it just business development? What do you...
Well, I mean, I teach just because of all this background with Southwestern. I teach a sales course, a management course, the undergrads. I teach a communications course. I teach a leadership course.
All the same, in the same semester?
As adjunct faculty, I'm teaching at night, and it rotates every 5 or 6 weeks. You start another course. So
but you're teaching one class?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say you're a full-time professor.
No, I'm not. But and then I have an outlier literature course on the writings of C.S. Lewis, which is probably,
cool.
Since I'm teaching that at church now, that's probably my favorite topic. I mean, I've gone deep dive on Lewis.
Oh, okay. Can we nerd out here for a second?
If you want.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, good time to get something to drink. Okay.
So maybe someone's doing the dishes right now.
Or maybe somebody's like, oh, I love C.S. Lewis, and they perk
Okay.
up.
Top 5, or not 5, it could be 5, 6, 1, favorite facts that you learned about C.S. Lewis that was just fascinating to you. Because I like when people talk about things that they're fascinated by, that's always interesting to me. Even if the topic, I don't know anything about C.S. Lewis, or relatively.
Yeah.
But if you get me talking about Formula One, I'm in.
Cool.
And it's interesting. I think so.
Yeah.
When people think it's interesting, that passion comes through.
Gotcha. Well, I would say one thing is that Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were good friends at school. They went to Oxford, and they were pals during their college years, and they both helped each other. So that's probably one fact. So biographers would say Lewis was Tolkien's midwife to the Lord of the Rings. He helped birth the Lord of the Rings because they were different types of writers. Tolkien helped Lewis become a Christian, because Lewis was a raging atheist in his 20s. He had been through World War I. He had been wounded in battle. He came back and wrote. He was trying to be a poet. And he wrote just some really dark stuff about war. So he had wanted nothing to do with God. He would debate people about the non-existence of God, etc. But he fell in with Charles Williams and the Inklings and Tolkien, and Tolkien kind of gently led him to Christ. So Lewis wouldn't have been Lewis with Chronicles of Narnia and Mere Christianity and Screwtape Letters and all that if he hadn't been with Tolkien. Tolkien, on the other hand, would never have finished Lord of the Rings. He worked on it for years and years, and Lewis was like, finish. You got to get this thing done, because Tolkien was such a perfectionist. He was just like, no, I'm starting over. Ruin that chapter. I got to get the language of the elves just right. And so anyway, they both helped each other become who they ended up being, which were tremendous.
You could say Lewis was the Sam to Tolkien's Frodo.
Okay, nice.
That's
good. I'll accept it. That's good. If that's how you connect it, that's a good.
In my head, that's where I went.
No.
That makes sense.
That's good.
So he was an atheist. That's a fun fact. They worked. I didn't know that they had that. I mean, I knew they knew each other and they were friends and stuff. I didn't know there was that much influence in between their works.
Oh yeah, and they met every Tuesday. For the Inklings was a group of writers and poets, and they would meet at the Eagle and Child and have pints of beer and smoke and talk and read each other's work
in London
out loud. No, this is Oxford.
In Oxford.
Yeah. So they'd read each other's work. So he's like, wouldn't it be cool to be sitting in that little pub? I've been in the pub. I got pictures.
I was going to ask you, have you been? Okay.
Oh yeah. And just to say, this is where they sat, and this is where, he read The Hobbit to
the first
C.S
time.
Lewis. Yeah, it's like, here, guys,
Like they're
check
just
this
chilling,
out.
and then he's like, and then he built the ring. Oh,
Yeah,
that was the
here's a little
first time
something I'm
someone.
working on about
That was the
Mount
first time
Doom.
someone laid eyes or heard that tale.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, but anyway, those are some facts. The other
That's
fun fact
fascinating.
was that no one really knew that Lewis had died on November 22nd, 1963, because of
Kennedy.
Because Kennedy got assassinated on the same day, and that took world news away from this very famous. Lewis was very famous in the 50s, and he's real famous today even, but back then he was famous. He was on the cover of Time magazine in America, and so he died the same day as JFK and also Aldous Huxley, Brave New World.
And they all done it same day, but when Kennedy gets shot back into the left, it's kind of your second page. No, you're not even second page news.
So if you get, he has a good movie out, The Most Reluctant Convert, which is really good, and it's short, but it tells his life story, which is good. He also wrote a book, autobiography called Surprised by Joy. If you want to know about his life, people wanted to know, how did you become a Christian? So he wrote about it. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And they think joy, you read that, you go, oh, Joy Davidman, his wife that he married late in life? No, that's not what he meant. That was not the same person. Everybody thinks, oh, surprised by my wife. No, her name was Joy. That's not the Joy he was talking about.
It must have been cool when you first met her, though, because he had written that, and then he goes,
well, she was also a raging communist and wrote some dark stuff. She got famous in America too for her plays and her poetry more than anything. But she was a member of the Communist Party, very disillusioned. She got divorced from her husband and ended up meeting Lewis. They were pen pals for a long time.
Ironic name.
What?
Joy,
yeah. Yeah. She's a brilliant woman.
More like Grim. But Joy.
Yeah, Grim wouldn't do well. Okay. Enough facts.
That was great. No, I appreciate that. That's so fun.
I mean,
when to pivot from C.S. Lewis a little bit, because you mentioned the I was gonna ask. I had lost the question now. You were talking about teaching. Okay. Dan mentioned that he was writing a book, but I'd be curious.
Who's this Dan guy? Oh, Dan Moore.
I made me think of this because I'm like, wait a minute. You are into like writer's lot. You read a lot. Are you writing?
I do. No, I'm not writing. I always told people always came to Dan and me and said, you guys should write a book. And I'm like, my problem is I take stuff, digest it, synthesize it, make it simple, and then give it to the masses. So that's where I got a lot of, the Men Are From Mars stuff, and the stuff I taught at Southwestern was stuff that I thought was interesting, that I thought could help people. So, but I never had, writers always say, well, I had to write another book because there was another book in me. I don't feel there's a book in me because everything I think is like Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun, Maybe it's just all marketing. Here's a new spin on an old thing, but I don't. Dan, go for it, brother.
I could be like, it sounded like the way that you talk about other writers is like someone who is researching to write about, or you wouldn't write like a biography about C.S. Lewis or something like that, or
I feel like I can teach, and I've got a huge class at church that I'm teaching. We're just finishing the Screw Tape Letters. There are about 80 people, which is pretty big class for a church, adult Sunday school. But I feel like the teaching element, that's where I land, but not the
writing.
No, because when I'm reading, I've got a whole shelf of books downstairs of people that did biographies of Lewis, from Walter Hooper to Alan Jacobs. Some of them Pat Roach knows well because he went to Wheaton. And there's the C.S. Lewis Center at Wheaton College. So there are guys that have literally devoted their lives to study, that went and lived in his house. It was called the Kilns. They went and lived in his house and wrote there. So it's, they're like,
it's more like leave it to them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Now at church, you're doing this is another thing I wanted to ask, because I think it's pretty cool, and I know it means a lot to you. So I want to hear what that's like to you. But you're a deacon at your church, and then you're the
head deacon,
the head deacon,
chairman, whatever.
I was going to say chairman,
president. or I have them call me Eminence, Your Eminence. But anyway, no. Yeah, I'm a deacon at church. I've been there for 20, 25 years.
Did they actually call you?
No.
It'd be so funny.
It would be funny.
Some first-year person at the church, just like, hey, listen.
Yeah. No. I try to be humble. I'm proud of my humility. But anyway, the deacon part is just, I feel like I should help people or serve in some capacity.
And you and JT go to the same church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought you guys,
Maybe back in the day he showed up a few times. He said, he used to be at Belmont. I'm over at Christ Community.
And then that's a big deal. And I just remember that you mentioned that was like something you were proud of. So,
well, it's just something I feel compelled to do. I don't want to just be a bench warmer at church. I don't want to just, be a consumer Christian where you just go, okay, feed me,
tell me the thing, yeah.
Tell me what I need to grow, and then I'm not going to do anything with that. So we're there to help widows and orphans and folks that are down on their luck or lost their job or need money. I mean, we have a fund for that. So we're trying to do more than just a little cloistered navel gazing club at church. We're trying to move out in the community and impact people. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's good.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah. So there you go. Is that enough?
That's good.
Okay.
Now let's get into some Southwestern stories.
Okay.
And I think we'll end with that at some point.
Oh, the map. Yeah.
But you also had letters from. Do you have the letter from Q?
Oh, somewhere.
So I can send them this.
I think it may be over there in the other part of the room. This is all PowerPoints. Yeah, there's a file. I don't know if you want to read Q's letter to me.
No, I just want to
Quentin Roberts composed a letter to me. Oh, here's something that's cool. That's one called Correspondence.
We're breaking out
that one, the blue one.
Breaking out old memorabilia here, folks.
This is something that you can't see, but I want to show you. There was a magazine. This is a national magazine called Sales and Marketing Management Magazine. And they came in 1994 to observe, sales school. So their entire September publication, we were highlighted the Southwestern training in there. So this is a little excerpt. So here you see, sales school was never like this.
Dr. Rock.
So we got a little so it just goes through, and that's the layout here. Isn't it? It says crazy, unpredictable, intense, 5 days of nonstop information, pure energy, and near lethal doses of motivation. Anyway, so, but it just takes you through the program. There's a little picture of a young Dave Causer, now the president of the company, sitting with a group of students.
Whoa.
But we thought that was so cool back in the mid 90s to get featured in a magazine about selling.
Simply the best.
Simply the best.
The Southwestern Company Summer Sales Training Program.
Yeah. And Tina Turner wrote a song about that. Simply the best.
That's hilarious.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
I got you.
Made that up. Sorry, Tina.
Look at this. Oh, man. Are you going to play at Dan's at the reunion?
No. What, the Dr. Rock thing?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Busted out for
that flying V guitar is in Ryan Davis's office right now with no strings on it.
Why?
It was just an old guitar I picked up because I needed to I got tired of playing air guitar, so I got an actual guitar that didn't have strings for the final send-off. There were fog machines and explosions, and it was very cool. But then I realized, and there was a light show. We used to set up a light kit at TPAC, but it got over the top. It got too much. I'm like,
it was like a full production.
I'm in concert. And I'm like, no, it's a recording. Relax.
There's more money in the production for the show.
Yeah.
The sales school budget.
Yeah. I mean, those guys at TPAC, they really helped us. They rolled out big subwoofers and blew the place out. So I'd play Eruption from Van Halen, and then
unbelievable.
Girl, you never.
Marketing manager Lee McCroskey transforms the Tennessee Performing Arts Center auditorium to a rock concert-like atmosphere to recharge student dealers for their next seminar because they're about to get smoked.
Yeah. I was so funny whenever I talked. I still say that during my little talk. I say, you guys who think this is a great time, you won't even remember this next week. You'll remember nothing. And they're like,
And we don't.
what? And they don't. So
Nobody does. Look at this. They put even like a day on the book field.
yeah,
Bears a mat off cool gray, misty rain drifts of the grass.
yeah.
None of the residents of Yorkville, New York, go to the beach on June Saturday. 7:28, led with pulse into the parking lot. So did they follow this kid?
Yeah. And this is different than the Rolling Stone article that was done on us, which was not as positive.
What was that?
That was same time frame, somewhere in the 90s, I
You
think.
guys were on the Rolling Stone?
Yeah,
I didn't
sent
know
a
this.
reporter down to this is when we were at the old company, as I remember, and it was it was a long article on it wasn't like it wasn't this effervescently simply the best. It was like this company takes students,
Takes advantage.
takes advantage,
Labor trafficking.
it was not. There was maybe a paragraph, like the opening paragraph, that had a few sentences that were useful, and then the rest was just like,
No way.
yeah. I mean, what would Rolling Stone write about a
Sales
an
literature.
entrepreneurial, capitalistic?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nah.
But I'm not gonna say Ron Burgundy.
Ron Burgundy.
I just did a birdie from old times.
Yeah.
Told me that there was a documentary. Like some people showed up at the company at some point, like in the 90s or something, or I don't know what year, but they showed up and they followed. There was like a documentary that they were doing. They followed 3 different people.
Yeah.
And one of them like had a great summer. The other one was like that middle of the road, and the other one quit.
Yeah. I think that may reference that there was an Estonian film crew, a famous cinematographer from Estonia, which wouldn't even compute in our world, came over and did some following and did different versions of the summer. That's what I recall. Now, somebody else can correct me on that, but it caused a big stir because it was like, oh my gosh,
It's
this isn't positive. Anything that wasn't 100% positive was like anathema. So
if it's neutral, it's negative.
yeah, can't have it.
No, where's the paper you had written down some red stuff about the book field, some stories?
Oh yeah, I told the only story that I thought was cute was you know how people have dog stories. Well, I had a ram story, which is very short, which is good. But I went up to a house, and people have guard dogs. This family had a guard ram. I mean, a ram, like he was 4 feet tall, minimum, a beast with the big curly horns. This is, I don't know. Let's see. It wasn't New York. It may have been Ohio for summer, but I went to a house and I was like, hey, and I didn't know if anybody was home. No one came to the door, but there was this ram out standing on the sidewalk blocking my path. And I was like, hello, Mr. And he just like stared at me like you would expect. And I'm like, move a little to the right. He would shift a little. I'm like, okay, move a little. I'm like, I got to get to this door. And I thought, you know what? This is a door I don't necessarily have to go to. And I pulled out my telescopic pen just because I thought this could be useful. Maybe I could hypnotize him or something. But as soon as I turned my back, he just like came up and it gave me a big boop in the butt. And I'm like, holy. So I'm like whacking him on the head with this telescopic pen. He didn't even feel it. It was like, a fly swatter. And so he pushed me back to my car and I left. And I don't recall getting into that house. They may have been laughing on the inside of the house.
Oh yeah, they were HBHing.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was an encounter I remember.
And that was that
guard ram.
Was it the same as the flagpole summer?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
It could have been Illinois or Ohio. I don't remember.
Great times.
A long time ago.
Great times.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do some rapid fire and then the dirt pile.
Okay.
Unless you got some more thoughts.
No.
Okay.
No. Please
Okay.
Spare me from myself.
I'm having a blast. Okay.
Yeah.
Rapid fire question. So, number 1, favorite place you sold of all the summers. Favorite territory.
Oh, I'd probably say Illinois.
Really?
Yeah.
I could have sworn you were going to say New York.
Well, New York was right up there. I had great times up in New York and certainly memorable my first summer, but I liked Illinois because I took all the mistakes from my first summer and then just hit the ground running my second summer and just
nailed it.
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, people are literally opening the door going, "Are you the book?" You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
And this was pre-social media. It was like, "Are you Lee?" They'd open the door. "Are you Lee?" "Yes, come in."
Oh, you gotta love that.
I'm like, "Here, have a VL."
Oh my gosh, well, hang on. This is like buzzing.
Okay.
Oh, this is up. Some people are calling me.
Okay.
And okay, so the second question: favorite kind of turf?
I did well in small towns. So I didn't do tons of country. I would do the weaving like a spider web around a town, you know, do the exterior, and then wherever had the most names, I would penetrate from that side and work my way into the town. I mean, I'm talking about a town
Genius.
of like
1,500.
well, yeah, at least maybe 5,000. I could live there for a long time.
Ooh, those are good.
And I would know everybody. I mean, names are like
Those are good.
Yeah,
That's fair.
that's me.
Favorite advanced sales? We kind of went with a keynote with Roger Sipe, but where you were selling, did you guys do like cassettes of like or 8 tracks of or? I don't know how old your car was.
Yeah, we did.
That's about how old you are. But I mean,
no, I'm seriously old. We did vinyl. It was on vinyl and the advanced sales. And
what about doing a dirt road?
Yes, I enjoyed. Back in the day, there was Tom Groon. You don't know him. Don't remember anything about it. Todd Ballinger may have had an advanced sales. He was great.
Todd is great.
Yeah, Todd McWhorter. A lot of Todds.
Yeah.
McWhorter had a great advanced sales. But it was the old dudes like, you know, Alan Clement's advanced sales.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the back in the days cassette tapes.
Do those exist anywhere in digital?
It's all Jeff Kidney questions.
We gotta ask Jeff.
Jeff was never, I don't know. Jeff does a great job, but creating a library, I don't think was his main goal because he was always had so many requests. And I would love to get my hands on some of that, but I think it's, I mean, I may have cassette tapes somewhere.
Todd Ballinger did advanced too. We had Todd
I
Ballinger.
know.
And
He was
awesome.
Good man. I actually met Todd and Chris Adams on the very first Sizzler. Well, in a Sizzler trip, it was a 20-man trip on a cruise, and we bunked together. We were in Viking Deck 229, and we met. We didn't know each other, and we became great friends.
Yeah, his humor is. Oh, it's just so dry, so sarcastic.
He was on a lot of my videos. He was a good man, and still is.
He's great. He'd be a person where it's like having a beer, watching a game or something with him would be hilarious.
He was funny.
Okay, so favorite product to sell?
Well, my mainstay was the volume library, which doesn't exist now. It's the Southwestern Advantage books. But yeah, that was.
I always like the college entrance stuff.
Did you?
Yeah, it
didn't exist when I was in.
Yeah, no college was.
No, there were no colleges. Just one room.
1855 before we started recruiting college kids because colleges were invented.
Colleges were
in '68. Okay, the favorite HQ that you had.
As far as people or location,
but in general, Danny stayed at a school like that. That was like so random.
That's cool.
Yeah.
My worst was in Maine, which was my worst summer, which is another whole episode sometime. But that was.
Oh, don't say that. I'll take you up on that.
Don't do it. We won't do it to you people. Anyway. So let me block that out of my mind. We had I had HQ with people that let us have food in the fridge, a few amenities, and they had a pool. So that was kind of nice. But nothing. Some of you guys have much better stories
about the HQ.
Mine were just places to. Sleep.
Danny apparently there was a family that bought the school. It was like foreclosed somehow, and they bought the school for like $70,000. And every classroom was like a different theme. They had like a couple king size beds together, and they just decked it out and had a basketball court, the whole thing. And they lived in the school. And he was sitting with them. The way he ran into it is he was sitting with a mom, and the mom was like, "You should ask them," because he was looking for HQ. Yeah. And he goes, "That's a school." He goes, No. You should go knock on that door. Yeah. He's like, all right. And they're like, yeah, you can stay. And
you know what I would say if I were out working in that area? I'd say, yes, I am from the school. And the school does require that you get this. In fact, I live at the school. That would be perfect. Do you take advantage of it?
I don't know. But the thing is, I think in a way, because everybody knows if a family owns a school in a small upstate New York town.
Yeah.
So you say, I'm staying with the Johnsons. And then,
dude, yeah.
It's like, oh, great. Oh man. Okay. Best Well, that's the dinner pile story, so we'll get to that. And then the last is favorite breakfast spot, if you can remember that.
I don't think I had one. I mean, a couple of summers we ate at a Gracie Spoon little restaurant, like my first summer. And sometimes we just stayed at home and made something, and, but there wasn't like this. I got nothing.
Fair enough.
Nothing of interest.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's do this. Okay, now before we go into the dirt pile story, because we've been promising people and we got the map to go with it, so this is going to be a fun journey. Guys, be sure to check out the Executive Exercise podcast. That's Lee and I host that with some of our partners. So Carter Senior Benefits, Quentin Roberts, Will Metcher is on there, Pat Roach is on there, Alicia Huck is on there. And we do these bi-weekly, and essentially it's how to build great companies, how to train people, how to build a good culture. What else would you say to draw some interest?
Each week it's on a different topic, and some of them are sort of, esoteric, like how do you fight the imposter syndrome? That was one. And others are real specific about business building. So usually they're useful and they're fun. We have a good time.
And we laugh.
And they're an hour.
Yeah, they're an hour. It's good.
Unlike these.
So if you're tired of these,
if
10 seasons of this has been enough for you.
Yeah.
Pivot over there.
Right.
We get the gold nuggets over there.
Yeah.
Straight to the point. And it's always the same 6 people or 6 or 7 people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good group and there's a little, there's a connection and we sort of rib each other.
That's great. So on that note, okay, Alone and Malone.
Yeah.
This is the dirt pile story, the ponytails version, which I don't know what that means.
I think I'll shorten it. No one can survive. When I go Thursdays in sales school to give the talk, I say swordfish, put the clock on, and I can do it top to bottom in 30 minutes. I don't feel like I should do that.
Sure, that's okay. It's your story. You can tell
so I'll probably try. In the first episode of when we did this, I gave a severely shortened version, so I'll give a slightly longer one. But the main difference is I have a visual aid.
Yeah, this is
here. Yeah. So on Thursday night at sales school, back in the day, that's where we did our HQs and your roommates. You find out who your roommate's going to be and where you're going to go. And back when I was selling, we were from Kansas. I'd heard about Southwestern approximately a week before we left. So I didn't even know where we were going or what to pack or anything. So on Thursday night, it got down to like 3 of us guys left. They'd given out all the territory. We found out we're going to New York. So you 3 girls, you're going to Buffalo. Yay. You 3 guys, you're going to be roommates. You'll be in Syracuse. Yay. And you 3 guys, you're going to Malone. Crickets. And we're like, great. Dave, hey, I'm Lee. Nice to meet you, Jim. Good to see you. So that's when we found out where we were going, and we weren't excited. We had to actually get out an atlas. This is back in the day, and look up, G42. Oh my gosh, Malone is on the border of Canada. So Malone is literally like 5 miles from Canada. We'll see. I've got a map. It's way up there. So we did I'll spare you the details. We had obviously a long drive from Nashville together, and the 3 of us arrived, and it's just a little town of about 4,000 or 5,000. It may be different now. I should look it up, but it's still there. But when we got there was like a welcome station, place to gas up, and they had like souvenirs of Malone. One thing I got was a map, which I'll show you in a second. The other thing I got was a T-shirt, which I had to have. It was like kind of a piss yellow, kind of faded, nothing cool. And in like Comic Sans font, it said, "We're alone in Malone." And we were just like, man, I gotta have that. So, oh man. So anyway, we settled into a place on 20 Webster Street with a woman who was a hairdresser named Dee Plumidor. She was about 60, 70 years old. And we stayed in an upstairs apartment. So first week, I don't really remember much about sales school, Andres, except that I was notoriously behind. There were people that knew their talks because they'd been recruited in October. And I, 10 days ahead of time, I'm like, what's Southwestern? And I literally was signing it said contract on mine, dealer agreement. And I'm like, when do we leave? And he said, oh, Friday. So anyway, that's on the first episode.
Did you know we had the same like I got recruited
Timeline?
Wednesday of finals week.
Oh yeah.
I heard about Southwestern Thursday of dead week. Yeah, so when you say like I'm with you. And
Anyway.
I went to New York. So
Okay, it's beautiful. And we're brothers.
Oh my
Oh my
we're
gosh,
wearing
what's
the same
happening?
shirt.
What? Look at this. Can it be? Anyway, so we're in Malone, and we secured a place to stay. It took a few days. We were in a motel for a little bit, but we found this place, paid rent, the whole thing. She was a nice lady. And I went out to work, and I don't remember much about my first week, except that I remember coming home at night and just thinking, I am really butchering this talk. I mean, I am butchering it. So I would get out my sales talk, and I'd say, okay. And I'd look at it and go, okay, I didn't do that paragraph, didn't do that paragraph, didn't do that. I didn't do this page. I didn't have an intro. You know, it was just whatever I learned in sales schools are like, gone. So I was just ad-libbing. Terrible.
It was more like 80% ad-libbing instead of 20%
reverse. Yeah. So I sat each night, and if you're having trouble sleeping on the book field, the best way to go to sleep is read your sales talks. But I added each night I came home, I would add one paragraph to the talk. And I said, okay, no matter what, I'm going to say that paragraph. Even if I go blank, I'm going to say that. So I kind of built the sales talk as I was working. But it was 90 something degrees in upstate New York that first week. It was a heat wave. I know in some parts of the country that's nothing. But it was hot. I was working outside of Malone, which is in the country. Yeah. So I was walking about 7 or 8 miles a day, as I recall, long. And I had blowouts on my tennis shoes. I was sunburned. I didn't bring any sunscreen. And I had one pair of tennis shoes. So you can imagine how they smelled. But anyway, this is what it looks. This is what it looks like. This is the actual map. We should probably get closer.
And so, yeah, I can hold it up to I'll be your Vanna.
Yeah,
now,
we won't hold up for long. But
if you guys are listening on this, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can swap over to Spotify and check out the video of this too.
Yeah, no one has seen this.
Now, we should probably explain for the current, because some people are selling books right now.
Yeah.
And they use iPads.
I know.
They don't even
know. They're totally digitized. So what we're holding up is a printout of a county in upstate New York. And at the top of the map, it says Dominion of Canada. So that's how close we were to Canada. Malone is this little splotch right in the center. And then you can see, if Andres holds it up to the camera instead of himself, then you'll see, you'll see that all the red marker and green stuff are out here. That is what I worked the whole summer. So when I'd work an area, I would put a mark through it. And then you can see there are X's, maybe. That was like roads that didn't exist. That they actually, I was fighting deer flies and going down a trail, and that was the actual.
You're walking this?
No, I found a bike. That comes later. Anyway, so that's what it looks like. And so the dirt pile was down here somewhere on Low Road. But we'll
Can't be on High Road.
No, put that away.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the actual map. Never before seen by.
This is exclusive footage.
It is
on the Ponytails podcast.
Yeah, and an extra addendum to the story. So anyway, first week, you can just throw it on the floor. First week,
this is history. Lee.
It's hot. I'm tired. But the good news is, even after butchering my talks, I made the pay center report, and I was so excited because I'd made like $400 or $500, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like. I mean, I literally went to a house. I'll tell you this one story because I got so frustrated. If you've ever been approaching your first summer and you know that you've changed the sales talk, the approach, and your brain's going, this is not the sales talk. This is not the sales talk you learned. That is what was in my brain. But I was like, whatever you learn doesn't work. So let's make up something new. So I had ridden probably a half mile or a mile to this one farm out in the country, and a woman came to the door, and I wasn't getting blown up. People weren't being rude, but they were just like, whatever it is you're selling, I'm not interested. And blah, it was just like that recording. She opened the door and she started that. And so I just thought, well, I've got to do something different because she's already derailing me. So she was like, if you're selling something, and I went, hop, up, 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 and I gave her the timeout signal. That's what I'm doing with my hands. Up, 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 up. And she was like, she didn't know how to handle that because I kind of like messed up her
script. You gave her an objection.
Yeah. I'm like, it's time out. No, don't do this. And she's like, her mouth kind of opened. And I said, listen, this is my first week and I'm pretty harmless, actually. Why don't we just let me sit down and can I just practice on you? She's like, okay, if it's just practice. I'm like, just practice. I just want to practice my presentation. She's like, okay. So we'd sit down on the porch. And that's how I got in demos sometimes the first week, because
hey, that's part of it.
Worked.
If it works, it works.
Yeah. I mean, there were houses I went up to that I would do the approach and they'd say, no, thanks, I'm not interested. I go, hold on, wait, stop, wait, hang on. I was really bad on my part. Do this. Close the door. I'm going to knock again. And we're going to try this one more time. I know I can do it. Yeah. It was fun because all you had to do well was to break people's state. They come to the door and people are against you, right?
Yeah,
they're against you. In my sales class, I'm teaching this. People are against you before they're for you. So when they open the door and they're like, you just see their face. I'm like, I got to break their mental state. So I would do something that they didn't expect.
Hey,
like,
stop.
hang on, close the door. Let's do this one more time. I know. And if they smiled,
you're in.
You're in.
They come outside. No, you're not supposed to say that. You're not actually. Can you try again?
I mean,
you messed up.
I didn't do it all the time, but when I needed to, I did. Okay. So I'm working the first week. The end of the first week. Great news. I'm not going to walk anymore. I found an old crappy bike. So yes, that Saturday I get a bike. And so I'm thinking the next week number 2, I'm going to do so much better because I'm going to add paragraphs to my talk and I've got velocity. I can move. I don't have to like trudge to the next house out in the country. So I went out with a different mentality. It shifted from I'm just going to have fun and be crazy and do whatever, my first week to now I've got to get serious about selling. And that little shift may have affected my sales, but I went out and did worse my second Monday than my first Monday, which is discouraging because I was all primed. I was psyched and I had a bike and everything I was like, this is it. I'm going to kill it. I'm going for 300 units or whatever. And it turned out it was not a good day. I sold a Mufu, total of 3 units. And I was just riding home on my bike and I was sore. Oh, and I was sore. If you don't ride a bike for like, I don't know, 15 years, and then you get on a bike that has one of those little French plastic seats that just inserts into your butt with no padding whatsoever. After 12 hours of that, I was sore in a new place. So I am tired, sore, discouraged, bad self-talk. And I'm telling myself I'm getting worse at this. And then I'm calculating how much money did I make today? $15 divided by 12 and a half hours. Not good. And about that time, I reached the top floor and opened the door to our room. And I noticed the room looks different. I'm just like, what's the deal? And I went over and one of the beds is made. There were 3 of us in this big open bedroom thing. And I'm like, this isn't normal. And so I went over to the closet and I looked in and there were like coat hangers, clothes not there. And I'm like, oh no. And so I kind of yelled, I'm like, Dave, are you home? And he was like, I'm downstairs making sandwiches. I'm like, where's Jim? And he's like, just a second. And you could hear him running up the stairs. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm realizing Jim is absent. He just like didn't give us any indication at breakfast, just bus station out of here. So,
oh my God.
So he comes up and he hands me a sandwich and he's like, I made this for you. I'm like, thank you. And he's like, all right. You can see he's like a student leader head. He was practicing. He's like, okay, this is the lowest point of our summer. We could probably pull through this. We got to think. He was trying to give me a pep talk. We were just sitting across from each other on these 2 like twin beds. And I'm just like, okay. And he's like, we got to think of 3 positive things. And I'm like, well, we've got more room for our clothes. And take a bite of sandwich. He's like, well, yeah. And I said, the rent just went up. And he's like, that's not where I was headed. He goes, let me take it from here. So he did this little talk about how we can pull through this as a team and prove to our skeptics and whatever. And I'm just like, So I said, now this is going to get better. And he goes, yes. I think. I'm like, okay, well, that gives me confidence. But anyway, we're dead tired. We go to sleep. Next morning, wake up, and I'm thinking, okay, this has got to get better. Can't get worse than yesterday. And it's dark, and the alarm's going off. And I'm usually you start waking up before the alarm kicks in.
Yeah,
your biorhythm.
Body just starts adjusting.
But it's dark in the room. The alarm. We had alarms then. We didn't have a cell phone that would have an alarm. Sorry, back in the day. And so I'm like knocking the lamp off and like, oh, we set the alarm wrong. But it's true. It was time to get up. And the reason it was dark is a cold front had come through. Because we were on the border of Canada.
And this is still May. Like this is May 20. This time
like
this
May
time,
20. Yeah. So it went
like in the snows up there.
Oh yeah. My third summer it snowed in Maine. When I was calling in stats, it was beautiful. But this went from about 90 something degrees down to under 40 overnight.
Oh my God.
So, and I had not packed for winter because I heard this was a summer job. So I'm looking out the blinds and I'm just hearing just steady rain on the window. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm riding a bike, my new bike. So we get up and we go to breakfast and I'm sitting there and I have that map you showed and I am mapping where I'm going to go. I'm going to head down this road. I'm going to cut across. I'm going to work my way and I'm looking outside and the rain's still coming off the roof. It wasn't torrential. It was just a nice cold gray.
But after a few hours, it might as well have been.
Yeah. So, and Dave's like, I'm 100 unit pancakes. We're going to have a great day. And I'm just like, with a little orange juice, like, yeah, we're going to win. I mean, I was sick to my stomach. So we finished breakfast. He finished his breakfast. I watch him and we go out. He gets in his car, and I get my bike out from the little restaurant and I'm sitting under the roof watching the rain come down. And he pulls up beside me and he's like, hey, man, you have a great day. And I'm like, hey, Dave, enjoy your car. Is the heater working? He's like, wait a minute. Yeah, it's working fine. I'm like, stay warm. I'm like, how about those windshield wipers? He's like, shh. Yep, they're great. I'm like, stay dry. He's like, okay, man, you work hard, do your best. And I'm just like, goodbye. He drove off. And I remember watching his car, his old crappy blue Ford or whatever he drove. And I'm just like, I'm going to really be cold. Because I was sitting there on my bike doing this, and I could see my breath. I was like, man, it's summer. I can still see so I take off.
Your butt's sore.
Oh, yeah, butt's still sore. Forget that detail. But people at sales school are like, hey, what, didn't you bring a poncho? No, I brought only one warm thing. It was a bad choice. It was a full length rust color velour warm-up suit, like sweats, but it was velour. Now, if you don't know what velour is, it's like velvet kind of. I mean, I thought it might be water repellent, but I found after riding about 2 blocks, it was water absorbent. I was actually getting heavier as I was riding. So, it was, and I was going through puddles. You know, when you're a little kid, you go to a puddle and you put your legs out and it's like, and it goes on your back and you're like, this is funny. And I was doing that and I didn't think it was that fun. I remember getting wet and cold and my teeth, I would go up to houses and my lips were kind of purple, you know, I was freezing and teeth kind of chattered and that doesn't help first impressions. And I had long hair. So I'd go up to a house and I would kind of turn to the side and say, yeah, I was just over talking a couple days ago to whatever. And she would see my back and my hair with mud and stuff in it. And she'd glance at her couch inside and just go, no, thanks. And that I would just say, okay, well, I don't even have to, as she's closing the door, I don't even have to come in. I can just show you right here. And I would pull out my sample and try to demo it in the mist, you know, and I would write, you know, I'm like, when you see me, just honk and wave. I'm going to be here all summer, you know, but I don't remember getting in a house. So cold, bad start to Tuesday.
After a week Monday.
When
your roommate quit.
Yeah. Come home. Fewer people at home. So yeah, that afternoon, the rain had stopped, which was nice, but it was cold. And I remember I was working the shoulder of a road on the map. just a little county road, and a truck came by and gave me a little courtesy honk, like beep, beep, I'm here. And I wasn't paying attention. I was like, I hate my life. I hate my life. I can't do this. And then he honks, and I slow-mo kind of turn and look at him. But that changed my trajectory with my handlebars, and I wiped out. I didn't, and I wasn't going 50 miles an hour or anything. I was just, 10 or 50, but I crashed and went off the side of the road. My book bag opened, emptied some of the contents. So I'm putting that back in, and I feel like, I kind of, oh man, my knee, I must have scraped it. So I look down, and there's kind of blood trickling into my knee-high tube socks from the 80s. And man, so the guy tries to help. He's like, oh, dude, sorry, you okay? And I'm like, nothing to see here, just putting books back in. I'm fine. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm building my resume. Can't you see? I'm running my own business. I didn't say that, but he left. And at that point, I'm like, I'm done. So I went and found an area there was unpeople. Like, I'm not looking for people anymore. I want to find a place to sit and think. Bad idea. So I went and found a house. They were excavating the basement or something, and they had a big dirt pile out in front of the house. And so I just put my bike down and just sat on the dirt, which had become mud, because I didn't care. And I was just cold and tired and wet. And I'm just like, right now, so all the thoughts, what are your friends doing right now? Oh, they're about to go out. Oh yeah. What are you doing? You're on the border of Canada, failing. Okay, great. And so I literally got, like everybody does in the book field, you got that moment where you're emotional and tears are in your eyes, and I'm blowing snot bubbles and wishing I was somewhere else. But I remembered I did have one thing in sales school I did right. And that was, I wrote myself a note on Thursday night on the little card they gave us. Yeah. They may still do that. Had the "Don't Quit" poem on one side.
Do they still do that?
I think so, maybe.
I thought that was a really powerful thing.
It was smart. I flipped it over in sales school and wrote myself a note that said, you wrote this note when you were rational. You're reading this note because you've become irrational. And I listed my skeptics. I had some juicy ones back home from my fraternity. And I read those names: Steve Pankey, Rick Hargrove, Scott Morgan. And I just thought, those guys made so much fun of me, because they're like, oh, we'll see you in 2 weeks. You're going to do what? So all that, I read so here's the deal. I had in my hat, and you can't see a picture of it, and it no longer exists. I don't know what I did with it, but I had a hat made of jeans, which is denim. Very cool. Back in the day, if you were,
it was the hit. Huge in some communities.
If you were a fan of Casey and the Sunshine Band, go look that up on Spotify. But he wore a big hat, denim. Anyway, I had a hat made of jeans. I'm sorry. On the top was a zipper pocket. Okay, so I put that note in the zipper pocket of my hat, and just for such an occasion, I remembered there's something in your hat, your secret weapon. So I'm on the dirt pile. I unzip it. I pull it out. And I'm reading that note. I'm like, I was there for probably 45 minutes, and nothing was happening. No one was driving up saying, we have money. Can we buy something? So I folded up the card, put it back in, zipped up my hat, went back to work. And I tell people that it would have been a great Southwestern story if the next 5 houses that night bought, and it was glorious finish. It was not that way, except I did some demos, and the last house invited me in. I think they had children, but they bought a Mufu solid. I'm like, yes, 3 units. Ching. Another big day. But they fed me. The mom's like, what are you wearing? And I'm like, well, it's just this, she's like, why? You're in the rain. So she put my outfit in the dryer. The dad got me food. He when I was finished, and I'm sitting there going, a cow is a large, heavy animal that eats green grass and turns it into what? That's all I can't remember a talk. I just read cow. They put my bike in the back of his truck, and they drive me back to my headquarters a few miles away because it was dark. And they were like the coolest family that everybody's had. If you keep working, something good happens. And that I kept working that day. I didn't quit. Something good happened. It was that family. So vastly different mental state than July 4th when I was in Bombay, New York. Check the map. Smaller than Malone. But I unloaded what would be the equivalent of probably 12 or 13 Southwestern Advantage sets in a town. It was just like, let her rip, you know. And so I came home like riding my bike just much later in the summer, like little Southwestern tattoo. I'm a lifer. I love this. But way back second week, hated it.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's the story. It gets better. And I just tell people, you know, the first few weeks of practice, they're just training. So it's like at school, the analogy is in a semester, you start off, the degree of difficulty is low at the beginning of the semester, and then it gets hard. You got midterms, and at the end you got finals and research papers and all that stuff. So it gets harder at school. I said the exact same thing is at Southwestern Advantage, but it is reversed. It is inverted. So the hardest part of the summer, I think, is the first 3 weeks. And that's when most people quit, because they take a day like I had or a few days and they get out their calculator and go, okay, a day like today times 72 more, I'm in hell. And they just are like, it's not going to get better. And it does.
The next day, I have some questions about this.
Okay. First of all, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were going to ask me, is this all true?
No. What did you say the next day?
What do you mean?
Like, so you get home from this day.
Yeah.
You have this family like shows you this hope, but
yeah,
how are you feeling mentally the next day? Or like, do you remember that?
Well, I don't.
You had a rough start to the week.
It was. I mean, but I just felt like that dirt pile moment of me teetering on the edge of going, you know what, Jim may know something that I don't know about, you know, leaving early. That was a kind of pivotal, because I remembered my dad told me when we were doing our little last minute parent visit before we left, my manager came down and I was just kidding. I said, Dad, you know, if it doesn't work out, I can always work at McDonald's. And he said, not in this town. So I was like, okay, I guess I should finish. I should
go all the way.
It was a little intense, but that dirt pile, those thoughts, the whole summer boils down to thoughts. And so I think that I really turned a corner. I was like, I got to figure this out. So, and I prayed a lot, you know, in between houses. I was just either repeating names or doing my very first prayers, which one's easy to remember. It was just help. That's my prayer. It's like, God, help me.
At what point in the summer were you? I mean, you said much later. You were in Bombay. There was a T-shirt that says "Stay in Bombay."
Yeah, and I should have gotten that. Great. I would have bought it.
Yeah, I mean, they messed out.
Bombs away, Bombay. Yeah.
And was there a point where you started going? I mean, I remember for me, I just remember going, "Oh, I'm good at. I'm starting to really."
Yeah.
You're like, do you have that day in your head, or was it like?
Well, it was. You know, my sales picked up almost every week, somewhat dramatically. And then that week is when, you know, I was like, people are like, how'd you do it? You know, I was like top dog. And so
crushing.
Yeah. So it, you know, when you're selling, it gets easier.
Yeah.
People say, I don't like selling. I'm like, no, it's not selling you don't like. You love selling.
It's part of the challenge. Okay. Yeah, last question.
Okay. Let's wrap this baby up.
Have you had another day in your life that was like a dirt pile moment later in your life? I mean, things get harder in life. The hardest thing in life is not the book field, but well,
actually, no. Well, I know when I was interviewing in Missouri one night, I was recruiting teams. This is as a young sales manager. I got a phone call and somebody came in the room and said, "Are you Lee McCroskey?" I go, "Yeah." And they handed me a message that my wife was heading into surgery. She had an ectopic pregnancy that needed to be dealt with surgically. And so I'm like, see you guys. And I'm jumping in my car. I'm like, you know, flying back to Kansas City. That was kind of hard because it was like, you know, our first kid. Yay. And then, whoa. No, it's not your first kid. And so even now when she goes in and we're answering questions on some form for, you know, the government or whatever, like how many children do you have? You know, she will answer 4 because she had,
Wow. That's tough.
Yeah, that was hard.
I'm sorry, Lee.
No, I mean, no, it's cool. I don't sit and talk about it ever. But that was you know,
that's a tough moment.
Yeah.
And so do you think that, how do you think that, like, I guess the message is, because the dirt pile story is good for, it's hilarious and it's a wonderful story. We all know it works out, right? Because you became director of marketing, and you're on stage telling the story. So
yeah,
the whole time we're telling the story, we know, oh, it gets better. That's like there's like light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah.
But and that applies for first year about to go hit the summer.
Yeah.
But what it means in life later on, right? Like what when you, often on this podcast, people go, oh, the skills I learned in Southwestern really helped me with, right? Like, do you think back to the dirt pile story and think to yourself, man, if I've gone through this, I went through this moment, and when I was a young sales manager, like, how do you, like, today in your life, how do you like get through? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you do that? Like, what's your mentality?
Yeah, my mentality now is entirely different than back then, in that I involve God all the time. So anything I'm doing, I talk to God about it prior to. I mean, before we did this podcast, I'm like, God, Lord, help me just to do a good job for Andres and for the people listening, and help them, help me help people. And so my mentality is, if I'm not going to the main source of everything in life, your creator, then I can't do it on my own. I figured that out. And maybe Southwestern beat that out of me. But, I had a lot of hubris, and Southwestern does a lot of good for people because it teaches them to be self-sufficient. Like, I can do this. And it's like, yeah, I can do anything. On the other hand, no, you can't. You're not in control of anything. I mean, there's very little, you can control your thoughts for the most part, but life, I mean, can throw you a curveball, as you know, at any point. And it's just like, so I am not that I'm going to talk to God and everything's going to be fine, and it's all Pollyanna and everybody's cheerful and positive. And there's still bad things that happen, but you know what? I would cast my lot, cast my fate, cast my, my hope in him. That I know he has a plan for me, and I know he's, it says in the Bible, cast your anxieties, cast your fears on him, because he cares for you. So which is part of Mort's speech back in the day, cast your cares on him. So that's a helpful thought. That's a part I always taught in sales school, is there are helpful and useful thoughts, and there are useless thoughts. And that's the dark side. And the more time you spend there being dark or relying on yourself, I mean, at some point, I just think God created a world where it's impossible for you to make him unnecessary.
Whoa.
I mean, so that's
great.
See, that's so different than when I'm like a junior in college.
Yeah.
Going, let's go make some money. So that's how.
And I guess that's what I meant, because, like, again, the dirt pile story is hilarious, and it's historic because of the way that you impact people and the hope that you give people. I know for a fact there's been people who were gonna quit. They've come up to you. I almost quit. Thought of you.
Yeah.
And then I didn't quit.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I'm that person.
Sure.
And that's huge and important. Yeah. But God walked you through that. But it's minimal to, like, when you get into the real world and shit happens,
Yeah.
And now you can't have some family that's gonna, I mean, maybe you might, but, like, it's different. So then you start realizing there's a bigger dirt pile. And so that means I need a bigger, in that case, a family that dried your clothes. And in your case and mine, it's God.
Yeah. I mean,
oof.
I don't know how people stay married and don't have a foundation spiritually. And I'm talking about a relationship with God, not just like, oh, I go to church, or I go to mass, or I go to the ocean and I rub some rocks together and feel good about myself. That, to me, people call it spirituality. I just call that trying to become your own God, which is what the world wants us to do.
But
your own best life, your lived experience, you too can be God. I'm like, no, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. We'll close with this, because I wanted to tell you this, and I want to say thank you, because I don't think I've said it before. Maybe I have, but I wanted to say it this time.
Okay.
I got back from my first summer. I have a story where, like, faith kind of smacked me in the face, where it was one of those where it was so tough, I almost quit, right? And then God was like, hey, Do you see what I'm talking about now?
Mm.
Are you down to look at me?
Yeah.
And that I wasn't like, I wish I could say it was like, oh, and then from that moment, no, but it like struck something.
Yeah.
The way that things worked out, it couldn't have been any other thing.
Right.
I'm convinced. People don't mean to be preachy, but whatever.
Right.
But you were in Lincoln.
Mm.
We were next to the Runza in Lincoln.
Whoa, I love the Runza.
Can't spell Burning Q's joke. Sorry, I burned you, but I'll give you credit for this. Can't spell Runza without the runs. And we're sitting in front of the Runza, and you and Dan sometimes would come to top campuses to talk to kids and PC with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the top first year, so I got to hang out with Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting across from Runza, and I was kind of nervous. And I just asked him, like, hey, man, this happened. And what do I do? And you said something that really changed my life. So I wanted to thank you for this.
Mm-hmm.
You said, the best way to, I asked you, like, how do I do this faith thing? I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And so you said the best way to build a relationship with anybody, including God, is just spend time with them. And so since he's not physically next to you, the best way you can do it is just spend time in prayer, spend time reading stuff, trying to get to know, because he's always here.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my life. I mean, that was where my faith really started. After that conversation, I met up with a friend who started teaching me and discipling me like the next day.
Wow.
And then I started going to a church, and that's where I made a lot of my friends. Actually, our producer, Amy, that's a friend I made from church.
Nice.
And then later on, my wife, the first question she asked me when we sat down on our first date, she said, what's your relationship with the Lord? And I could tell her that story. And here I am.
That's
talking to the man that changed it.
That is great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Because I had so many PCs with people.
Yeah.
And I know, but I always, that's my one thought. If I want to have a useless thought, is just, have I done enough? Because I've gone from being on stage in front of thousands and PCs and 10 Sunday meetings a summer to
the ponytail
small class. Well, not this is big, but like being in a class with 10 or 20 students who are like, who are you? It's different.
Yeah.
And I know I had a positive ripple effect and probably some negative ones sometimes, but you just want to know, have I made significant contribution? So that's encouraging. So
we all think about, like, when we end, like, did I do enough? We'll tell you what, whenever that's for you, whenever the Lord calls you back, you deserve the party.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I will write that down.
Oh man, we can wrap that on that note. Let's cut this one out. Thank you guys so much for listening. Wow, what a way to start season 10. We were trying to figure out who should we follow Dan with, because the poor soul, if you just had some other person that just like, so I just got out of the boat field 2 summers ago. Not that that's bad, but it's like that's rough to follow. And like in sales school, we had to bring another big gun to the group.
There you go.
So here we go. Thank you guys for listening. Andres Gamboa here, Ponytails Podcast. Go check out Executive Exercises. Lee and I host that every other week. Check it out.
Shalom.
See you guys. Bye.
Peace. Boom. Oh, how did you do that?
And